I guess you love movies. I do too. Hi guys, and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be doing the first of hopefully many list videos, and today my list is going to consist of 10 directors that I really want to explore in the coming years and months, and wanting to watch more and more of their films. So there will be another video after this of another 10 directors that I would like to look into. I want to break these videos up, make sure they're not too long and repetitive, so I'm going to do 10 here and then 10 in another video, possibly next week, so look forward to that. So the first director that I'm going to talk about is a Danish director, and his name is Charles Theodor Dreyer. Now you may or may not have heard of him, however he has made several very important films to cinema, specifically The Passion of Joan of Arc, consistently thought of as probably the greatest of all silent films alongside Sunrise, and the silent documentary film, The Man with the Movie Camera. This movie is massively thought of as one of the greatest of the silent era, with the brilliant performance by Falconetti, who plays Joan of Arc in this movie. Many think that this is one of the greatest performances of all time, especially for a woman, and I've already seen snippets and the famous scene near the end of the film, which looks incredible and has one of the most stark and emotional close-ups ever seen in movies. That's definitely one I want to see, as well as films like Odette, Day of Wrath, and Gertrude, also made by Dreyer, who's Danish, as I said, and has made many films thought highly of by many critics throughout the world. Number 9 is Raoul Walsh, an American director, famous for his eye patch and several other movies that he's made. A collaborator with such like James Cagney. He made two very important films with him. First, The Roaring Twenties and White Heat. Many consider White Heat to be the best film that Raoul Walsh ever made, alongside the best movie that Cagney ever made, and one of the most important gangster movies of all time. In that era before The Godfather and Coppola and Scorsese, Walsh was one of the main sort of guys making those gangster movies. The Roaring Twenties, another one, another classic with Cagney. The other film I'm interested in seeing of Walsh, what was that? It was High Sierra, which I mentioned recently in another video. It was written by John Huston in my Sierra Madre review. John Huston wrote that film, Raoul Walsh directed it, also stars Humphrey Bogart. That's another film I want to see from Raoul Walsh. Now on to number 8, this is the first French director on our list, and that's Jean Renoir, who was a big director and a very famous one in the 1930s, late 1930s specifically, and has his most famous and possibly greatest film yet to have seen by me, The Rules of the Game, from 1939, which is 4th on Sight and Sound's most recent list of greatest movies of all time. I'm definitely interested in looking into his films, specifically The Rules of the Game and Le Grand Illusion, also made in 1937. Made several other films, but those are definitely the two most famous films that he's made. Also The River, which is made a lot later in 1951, it's his sort of study of Indian culture, and that's also a film highly regarded and one in colour instead of black and white, which is his earlier films. Now on to number 7, I'm going to look at Jean-Pierre Melville, the sort of king of the French gangster movie. Inspired many directors, including Quentin Tarantino, with movies like Army of Shadows, Le Cercle Rouge and Le Samouraï. These are all really well thought of movies with great style, one of the sort of forefathers of the French New Wave, alongside several other directors, one I will be going into a little bit later on. And yeah, one that inspired many directors and probably doesn't quite get the credit that he deserves. And so number 6, another person that doesn't really get the credit he deserves is Mizoguchi Kenji, or Kenji Mizoguchi, whichever way you want to say it. One of the great Japanese directors, who also was a doesn't really get the credit he deserves, with people like Kurosawa and Ozu from that period in Japanese cinema getting a lot of the credit. But Mizoguchi made a lot of movies considered masterpieces, such as Yugetsu and Sancho the Bailiff, and even The Life of Oharu. So there are many movies made by him that I'm really interested in looking at, that are considered artistically important, look absolutely beautiful, black and white, and very sort of humanist movies that I'm really looking forward to watching. I've watched a few films by Kurosawa and love him, and I've also watched a movie by Ozu, which I'll get into a little bit later in this video, but Mizoguchi is definitely someone that I want to check out. At number 5, the other French New Wave guy that I was talking about, and probably Mr. French New Wave, and that is Jean-Luc Godard. Now, Godard, I've watched Livre à sa vie, which is My Life to Live, which is an exceptionally poetic movie and shows his brilliant use of camera work. His camera seems to be alive in that movie, and it's so inventive in its own way. It's almost like its own character. I really enjoyed that film a lot. I'm looking forward to looking into more of his more revolutionary films, such as Breathless, which almost invented the jump cut, Contempt, and even Band of Outsiders. Godard is definitely someone in cinema, that I need to look into more. He's a revolutionary and someone I really am looking forward to watching more films of. The next guy on the list is someone very different to Godard, but no less revolutionary, is Luis Buñuel. Now, he's a Spanish director, and was kind of the king of surrealist comedies, such as The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, and Phantom Liberty, and what was the other one he did? The Exterminating Angel, and even more closer to dramas like The Obscure Object of Desire. He made a lot of very interesting surrealist comedies with odd and sort of disconnected situations that are really looked at as very sort of surreal and abstract comedies that are very revolutionary and very individual to him. He definitely has a very individual style that I'm looking forward to checking out. At number 3, somebody I mentioned a little bit earlier, which was Yasuju Ozu, who is a director that a lot of people consider one of the greatest directors of all time, somebody that I've always looked at and wanted to watch his films. Recently I watched Tokyo Story, which is considered his greatest film and third on Sight and Sound's most recent list of greatest movies. Watching it, it truly is one of the greatest, maybe one of the most perfect movies ever made. It's a transcendent masterpiece, a movie that looks at the simple life of ordinary people and their relationships and idiosyncrasies and complexities like no other movie. It's a truly fantastic movie, and he has a very distinctive and understated style that I'm really looking forward to seeing in other movies such as Late Spring, Early Summer, and Autumn Afternoon, Floating Weeds, and many others. And I'm really looking forward to exploring his filmography even more, because he is possibly one of the greatest and an understated master at that. Number 2, just missing out on my top spot in this list, but really it's unranked, and that would be Ingmar Bergman, the great Swedish director, someone I've yet to watch a single film of, but really everyone considers him one of the greatest of all time in terms of directing and the way he looks at humankind and love and death, and he's definitely one of the most influential of all directors. People specifically like Woody Allen are massively inspired by his films. Those like Wild Strawberries, The Seventh Seal, Persona, Fanny and Alexander, and Cries and Whispers are all films I definitely want to check out from the master of Swedish cinema, that's Ingmar Bergman. And my final guy on this list is Federico Fellini, arguably the greatest of all the Italian New Wave directors. And again, considered one of the greatest of all time. I've only watched one of his films currently, that was 8½, and I thought it was an incredible surrealist masterpiece, one that's probably deeper and more meaningful and has many more layers than almost any film ever made. I thought it was fantastic, also a brilliant dark comedy, and I really loved that movie a lot. A lot of people consider it his masterpiece. I also want to see La Strada, La Dolce Vita, Nights of Cabiria, and Amrecord, along with many others. And his films definitely are another one that I want to check out. So there you go, those are just 10 directors' movies that I want to check out sooner rather than later. I will have another 10 directors that I want to check out in the next week, hopefully, for you guys. So, hopefully you enjoyed my first list video. If you did, like, subscribe, drop your comments down in the section below. What other list should I do? Let me know, I'd really like to hear your thoughts. And hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you next time.